She had everything: talent, beauty, and promise. But sometimes, the heaviest thing to carry is the life everyone thinks you're lucky to have. This is the story of Esther Greenwood, a girl who could do anything, and yet felt nothing. Sylvia Plath's The Bell Jar isn't just about depression. It's about the silent collapse that happens when the world applauds your success, while your soul quietly suffocates inside a glass jar. At first glance, Esther has what most people would call a dream life. She's young, bright, studying literature, working for a glamorous magazine in New York City. She's surrounded by opportunity, by the hum of ambition, by women who seem to be living the future she's supposed to want, but something doesn't fit. The lights, the parties, the attention, it all feels artificial. She looks around and sees people chasing versions of happiness that feel hollow. And beneath her smile, a question begins to grow. What if I don't want the life everyone else seems to want? That's the beginning of the crack in the glass. The bell jar in Plath's novel is the invisible prison of the mind, a transparent dome that lets you see the world, but keeps you from ever reaching it. Inside, the air grows stale. You can see people laughing, working, living, but it's like watching life through fog. You can't touch it. You can't breathe in it. Esther feels trapped not by walls, but by expectations. She's expected to be perfect, smart but not intimidating, pretty but modest, ambitious but not too ambitious. She's expected to have a plan, to fall in love, to marry, to settle down. But what if settling down feels like giving up? In one haunting line, Plath writes, "I saw my life branching out before me, like the green fig tree in the story. Every fig was a future, a career, a marriage, a family, a life abroad, a life of art. But as Esther hesitated, unable to choose, the figs began to wither and fall, and she realised she was starving to death under the tree. That's the truth no one tells you about choice. Having too many can paralyse you as much as having none. The deeper she falls into herself, the less she feels connected to the world around her. Her body moves through life, attends parties, answers questions, smiles for photographs, but her soul is somewhere else, watching from behind the glass. She tries to write, but the words come out dead. She tries to sleep, but her mind races. She tries to cry, but feels nothing. That's the cruel part of depression. It's not always sadness. Sometimes it's the absence of everything. It's not drowning in emotion. It's the ocean suddenly going still. The bell jar tightens, and the sound of her thoughts becomes unbearable. She begins to think about death, not out of drama, but out of exhaustion. She says, "It seemed silly to wash one day, when I would only have to wash again the next." That's what despair looks like, not grand gestures, but the slow erosion of meaning. The tiny invisible moments when life stops feeling worth the effort. And the worst part, no one notices. Because Esther smiles well, she looks fine, she's functioning. The world doesn't see her suffering, because the world only listens to the loud. Sylvia Plath understood something few writers dared to say out loud, that intelligence can deepen despair. The more clearly you see the absurdity of the world, the harder it becomes to pretend it makes sense. Esther isn't weak, she's awake, and that awareness, that unbearable clarity, is what drives her into the bell jar. She sees the hypocrisy of gender roles, the emptiness of social ambition, the performative kindness of people who only love what they can use. It's not madness that consumes her, it's lucidity. And that's what makes her story terrifyingly modern. Eventually, Esther's thoughts lead her into the darkest parts of herself. She isolates, hides, drifts. Even her reflection feels like a stranger. She says, "Wherever I sat, on the deck of a ship or at a street cafe, I would be sitting under the same glass bell jar, stewing in my own sour air." That's the image Plath leaves us with, a soul preserved but suffocating. Alive but untouchable, she tries to end her life, not out of selfishness, but because she sees no exit. Her pain has become a sealed system. No air can enter, no light can reach her. But death doesn't come. And slowly, painfully, she begins to breathe again. The second half of the bell jar isn't about recovery, it's about rebirth, but not the kind with music and flowers. It's quiet, it's uncertain, it's real. Esther doesn't overcome her illness. She learns to live beside it, to walk through life with cracks and still find light leaking through them. That's what makes the bell jar different from most stories about mental health. It doesn't promise salvation, it promises survival. And sometimes, survival is the bravest thing a person can do. Plath wrote this novel in 1963, in a world where women were told that their dreams were dangerous, that their feelings were exaggerated, that their sadness was hysteria, and yet she spoke the truth that still resonates today, that perfection is not peace, that success is not happiness, that being fine can be the most painful lie of all. Esther's story isn't just a descent into depression, it's a rebellion against silence. She refuses to keep pretending. She refuses to smile when everything inside her is collapsing. And through that refusal, she becomes a mirror for every person who's ever felt invisible. You can feel her words reaching across decades, whispering to every quiet girl who ever felt like she was failing at being enough. I took a deep breath and listened to the old brag of my heart. I am, I am, I am. Those words, simple, rhythmic, almost primal, are not a cry of despair, but a declaration of survival. What makes the bell jar so haunting isn't Esther's breakdown, it's how familiar it feels, how close her thoughts sound to ours when no one's around, that quiet dread of existing in a world that wants your perfection more than your truth. Plath forces us to ask, what happens when a person sees the world too clearly and realises she doesn't belong to it? Maybe she breaks, or maybe she awakens. In the end, the bell jar lifts, but only slightly. Esther breathes again, but the air still trembles. She knows it could descend again at any moment. And that's what makes the ending so human. Not victory, but fragile continuation. Because that's what healing really is. Not the disappearance of pain, but learning to live with it without suffocating. Sylvia Plath's The Bell Jar is more than a novel. It's a confession, a mirror, and a warning. It tells us that the most dangerous prisons are invisible, and the loudest screams are silent. It reminds us that even when the world doesn't understand your pain, your existence still matters. Because surviving isn't about being happy, it's about choosing to stay, even when it hurts. So if you've ever felt like you're living under your own bell jar, watching the world move while you stand still, remember, the glass can crack. It can lift, even a little. And in that small breath of air, in that fragile space between despair and survival, you are still alive. I am, I am, I am.